What if the spiritual heart of Christianity, the seat of faith for billions, once operated like Wall Street? What if behind sacred altars and ancient prayers lay ledgers, investments, and banking vaults hidden from believers' eyes? Today, on Financial Footnotes, we dive into a lesser-known saga, how the Vatican transformed into a secretive financial powerhouse, a story of faith, power, money, and consequences that still echo today. But beware, the answer is not what you expect. To understand this story, we rewind centuries. The Vatican seat of the Catholic Church held vast spiritual authority. But with that authority came land, donations, tithes, and property, a global fortune. Over time, the Church evolved from shepherd to landlord, landlord to lord of commerce, and ultimately to banker. By the early 1900s, wealth poured in through indulgences, noble patronage, and wills. Yet by the mid-20th century, there was no formal structure to manage it. That would soon change. In the 1920s and 30s, as economies faltered, the Vatican quietly began to centralize its resources. Church institutions across continents, dioceses, charities, orphanages sent money to Rome for safekeeping. Behind the scenes, discreet clerics and lay financiers treated church funds not as holy gifts, but as assets to be managed. By the 1950s, the Vatican had effectively become a bank accepting deposits, managing real estate, even making loans. Outside the walls of Rome, few knew it existed. After World War II, Europe rebuilt, and so did the Vatican's finances. The Church invested in property, industrial ventures, even global markets, often through shell companies. Millions flowed in from patrons seeking favor, forgiveness, or legacy. Inside the Vatican's walls, an elite circle of administrators rose in power men who knew more about capital returns than catechisms. To some, this was prudent stewardship. To critics, it looked like financial engineering under a halo. But secrecy breeds risk. By the 1970s and 80s, whispers grew louder: missing funds, opaque transactions, suspicious partnerships. Why was a spiritual institution dealing in speculative ventures and secret loans? Whistleblowers emerged. Investigations revealed shell corporations and hidden real estate empires. The cracks widened not because of theology, but because faith and finance collided. The consequences were devastating. Inside, clergy were divided. Some saw corruption, others saw necessity. Publicly, credibility crumbled. Donations declined. Parishioners asked if their offerings funded charity or speculation. The sacred and the secular had merged, and the faithful were left wondering where their trust had gone. The Vatican promised reform. Auditors were hired, committees formed, reports released, but many changes were cosmetic. Shell companies lingered. Financial opacity endured. Those meant to reform the system often had every reason to protect it. To outsiders, it felt like rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. Fast forward to today. Faith and finance still intertwine. Megachurches, religious nonprofits, and faith-based empires now operate like corporations managing portfolios worth hundreds of millions. The pattern repeats: generous donations, tax-free status, limited transparency. History shows when faith becomes a balance sheet, the line between mission and empire blurs dangerously. First, transparency matters. Even sacred institutions must be accountable. Secrecy breeds suspicion. Openness builds trust. Second, mission versus money. When spiritual bodies act like banks, their purpose can quietly shift. Charity becomes investment. Faith becomes power. Third, history repeats unless we learn. What began as stewardship often ends in opacity. And here's the warning. Whenever faith and finance merge, always ask, where does my donation go? Who controls it? And do they answer to God or to a ledger? If this story surprised you, if it made you question what's behind the pulpit, you're not alone. On Financial Footnotes, we uncover the hidden economies shaping our world. So if you want more deep dives like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Tell us in the comments. Which modern institutions do you think might be operating like secret banks today? Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep following the footnotes.